The Xinjiang Uygur Autonomous Region celebrates its 65th anniversary this year. The region has undergone tremendous changes in recent years, with 2 million jobs created between 2014 and 2019 alone. From China's perspective, Xinjiang's transformation is a story of much-needed socioeconomic development. Outside observers, however, see the region in different terms, and stories have appeared in some Western media about issues like human rights and religious freedom, as well as criticism of Xinjiang's network of vocational education and training centers. So what is the reality? Today, we are joined by 3 Xinjiang residents from diverse ethnic backgrounds who will show us Xinjiang through their own eyes. They are connecting with us at Diorama International in Urumqi now. As we can see, they are in the traditional Kazakh yacht with the local ethnic decoration. So let me briefly introduce our guests for this special discussion. They are Diorama Tilak, a postgraduate from Xinjiang Normal University. Welcome. And Zhang Haotian, MIA candidate at Columbia University, volunteering now in Altai. And also we have Ma Xin, who is a Kazakh, founder of Galtai Gallery and the Schwarzman Scholar. We are also joined by a number of journalists and experts from both China and abroad. They are, we have Mustafa Haider Said, Executive Director from Pakistan China Institute, and Zun Ahmed Khan, Visiting Fellow, Belt and Road Strategy Institute at Tsinghua University, and Ganbar Nadari, columnist for Keihan International, and Liu Yunyuan, Associate Executive Editor and Chief Commentator from Beijing Review, and Wang Jiang, Postdoctoral Researcher, Institute of Law at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. So welcome to the show, welcome to the discussion. So we'll start with our 3 special guests from Xinjiang to tell their stories, what's Xinjiang like in their own eyes. Shall we say lady first? We'll start with Diorama, please.
Hello guys, I'm Diorama Tilak. I'm from Xinjiang Urumqi. I am basically a postgraduate student right now. I'm graduated from my college degree from 2 years ago. Actually, once I finished my high school, I went to Beijing for my college degree, and I stayed there for 5 years. But after the graduation, I came back to my hometown.
Thank you, thank you. Next, shall we start with Haotian?
Okay, my name is Zhang Haotian, and now I'm a volunteer in Altai Prefecture, Xinjiang Uygur Autonomous Region. And before, I was a student in Peking University, majoring in history, Spanish, and economics.
So next, Ma Xin, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ma Xin, and I'm the founder of Galtai Gallery, the first international art center and contemporary art gallery in Xinjiang. I was born and grew up in the northern part of Xinjiang, ethnic Kazakh, and I went to Beijing for my undergraduate.
Thank you, Ma Xin. So basically, the panel is open, the floor is open to questions. So we have a group of journalists and experts from, different parts of the world. If you have any questions, go ahead, please, and ask them. Anything interesting you the most? Shall we start? Let me see. Yunyuan?
Hi, thank you for having me. First of all, I want to ask Haotian, which province do you come from, and why do you develop an interest in Xinjiang, and why do you go to Xinjiang?
After my graduation, I think I have to know more about my own country, especially the West. Before, I didn't have many knowledge about this region, and now I'm here to know my brothers and sisters from different ethnic groups, especially the Uyghurs, the Kazakhs. Yeah, that's my commitment.
So thank you, Yunyuan. Zun, do you have any questions?
Yes, of course. Firstly, thank you for organizing this panel. I come from Pakistan. One of our other co-panelists here also comes from Pakistan, and we share the border with Xinjiang as well. I think the culture is similar, and at the same time, I feel like I know what it feels like to be misrepresented by especially Western mainstream media. So I wanted to ask either any of you who would like to answer, when you hear stories about Xinjiang that in your experience, are very detached from the reality. What do you think you can do, or you are already doing, to remove certain misconceptions? And how do you think people like us who are trying to portray the true image about Xinjiang, how can we facilitate that journey, if there's anything that can be done?
I think people basically don't know much about my hometown. Like, they just know something that what the media said or what some very small part of group saying. I think that's not the whole image of my hometown, and I think I can be the characteristic person. I can see the future from my people, because we are the human being actually around me, like not something unreal, like we are the real person, yeah, not the media or something. This is the things that I'm seeing right now. So, and my daughter, yeah, my daughter's 1 year old now, and of course I'm gonna make her stay there, of course.
So Marcin, just following Zoon's question, like, do you experience, different stereotypes about Xinjiang?
Like, I found in the gallery, the time that I found there's a huge gap between how I view my hometown and how other people, even within China or outside of China, thinking about Xinjiang. So what we're doing today, I think, is like having more conversations and introduce the culture and the art to the rest of China and also to the international audience, and say, like, what's the place we are living and the Xinjiang in our people who physically here thinking of.
Well, Mr. Saeed from Pakistan, do you have any questions for the three of them?
I have a few comments, actually. And,
go ahead, please.
It's very nice to see that the narrative of Xinjiang is coming from people who are in Xinjiang. I think that is the most important thing about this conversation. Hats off to CGTN for organizing this, because what we are seeing is that there are many other volunteers who are outside of China and who are outside of Xinjiang and who are more than happy to speak on behalf of the Xinjiang people. And I think that is where the problem lies. The people of Xinjiang and those people who are inside Xinjiang have to speak on behalf of Xinjiang. So that is a very important thing, and I hope this continues. Secondly, I had the privilege of visiting Urumqi so many times, and I was in the Grand Bazaar last year, and I saw, I wish I could share the video, it was so full of joy. There was Kyrgyz, Tajik, Uyghurs in the Grand Bazaar dancing together, and right next to where they were dancing, there was a naan shop. The local naan, the local bread shop.
Exactly.
Yeah, we call it the same, yeah.
Yeah, they call it the same. I had the pleasure of going to Kalamai. The Karamai, it's the English name, and Kalamai is the Chinese name. It means oil, black oil. It has a lot of oil. So in Kalamai, which is a small city, there was a night bazaar, and there were handicrafts of local people displayed at night. My point is that what the three guests sitting in Yama International, which I've had the pleasure of staying in multiple times, is a part of the story. There is so much to Xinjiang, there's so much culture, there's so much art, and there's so many interesting stories that we have to tell. And I think what we need to encourage is to have more people like the three amazing people who are sitting in front of us in Yama International. There are millions of more people like them, to bring them outside of their comfort zone in the media and let them tell the story of Xinjiang. Because they are the true spokespersons of Xinjiang. People in other capitals of the world have no right to speak about Xinjiang.
And also we have Mr. Nadari from Iran. Any questions, any comments about the stories of the three young people?
Well, thanks for having me on this program. Well, your guests talked about how they were able to travel inside China and, of course, abroad for study and work. My question is this, because some fake mainstream media outlets in the West are claiming that Xinjiang is a concentration camp, that people are not allowed to travel freely. My question is this: when you traveled to Beijing, or even when you decided to leave the country and study abroad and come back to China, were you mistreated for your decision just because you were from Xinjiang? This is my question. How did the authorities in China treated you when you decided to go to study abroad and when you decided to come back? Any of the guests?
So I went to Beijing in 2012, as I mentioned previously, and after I finished my college, I actually went to Dubai for a year and working as a junior consultant there for the government agency. And then I actually also traveled around the whole Middle East region and studied in both Geneva and the States. So I think from my personal experience that I haven't encountered that many difficulties while traveling abroad or within the China. But I would say that definitely with what we see, the anti-terrorism policy and so on, there is a policy that people, when they're traveling, probably compared to other provinces, they might need to go through this type of process. But I don't see that there is a problem or it's very complicated for people to getting through their ability to travel within China. So that's for me.
And also, you mentioned about terrorism, etc. Is it safe to visit Xinjiang?
Well, I think it's very safe.
Anyone else can answer the question?
Yeah, if you...
Sure.
Well,
It's super safe here.
Yeah, a few days ago, I just asked one of my Uyghur friends in Ili Kazakh Autonomous Prefecture and whether or not it's safe to walk around on the streets at midnight. And she answered me that even you wear a bikini, there will be no problem for you to walk around.
Yeah, even for the residents here, for everyone, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can say you don't need to worry about like sneaking out in the middle of the night and you're worrying about your purse getting stolen, or maybe you robbed on the streets or something would happen to you accidentally. No, there's no worry like that. I would say you can go out in the middle of the night and you can trust the police on the streets. There will be police to protect you, and you know this. And for our girls, I would say, I have no worry to go out in the middle of the night maybe.
Yeah, free and safe.
Yes.
I have to add a little bit about something personal. Like I met a friend from the United States. The first time for him to be in Beijing, he asked me a question like, "Oh, I saw police in Tiananmen Square or in some other streets over there. I found that people are not afraid of their police." For him, it's a different situation because in the U.S., people tend to keep a distance from the presence of the police. In particular, let's say African Americans, probably you don't want to get involved or get engaged with the police force. But in China, people's impression is different. Experience like if you are close to the presence of police, you feel safer.
Yes,
you feel safer. Is that true, Marcin?
I think so. I think it's totally a different situation compared to the States. So, for example, the police, if police there, if like we encounter any problem in the street or we have some other like personal problem need to help, we sometimes often go to the police station and ask them to help us. So I think totally the relationship between us and the police is kind of relation maybe quite difficult to understanding for people who living in, for example, the States or other countries.
Yeah, it will be hard for people outside this country to understand that feeling. Like, yeah, we have this sounds we like to sing when we were a child in China, like every area of China. Like when you find a coin on the street, you should firstly give it to the uncle, please. Like it's actually it's the way to express this feeling of the closeness between the police people and us. It feels really comfortable, I think.
It's also another slogan, like if you have any question, you go to the police force, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And for example, when you arrive at home, you lost your key, what do? Call the police.
Call the police.
Come to the rescue. This is a very unique China situation, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that true, Yuan Yuan?
So I think the different comparison that you mentioned is very, very true, that in the West, people are seeing a police officer, and the thing is instantly, like, I cannot breathe. But then when you are in China, when you find a policeman on the street, and you feel safe. And this is very interesting. And I think one of the interesting things which strikes me most is that we have two guests who are from Xinjiang and Diorama and Maxin, and your English are so good. And
Thank
I mean,
you.
this makes the communication much better. And I think there is a Western media attacks of China for, saying China is wiping out the Uyghur cultural traditions, like the Uyghur identities, like wiping out the Uyghur language, for example, requiring the students to learn, force them to learn Mandarin. I mean, if learning Mandarin is cultural genocide, as they said, then what about every Chinese who has to learn English from kindergarten? This is not a cultural genocide, it's cultural suicide, I would say that. So when people hear you guys talking about your real experience, your true stories in Xinjiang, and people would start to think critically, they'll have interesting conclusions. On the one hand, you need to communicate, and on the other hand, you need to preserve your own cultural traditions. So the question really is how to strike a balance.
And so let's go a little bit beyond that. If you look at today's media, in particular Western media, we're talking about, there's a resolution proposed by different countries. If you look at the Western media, like 36 countries or 39 countries criticize China over Xinjiang and Hong Kong, but seldom, very few of them would mention that actually like 50, 70 countries support China's policy in Xinjiang. So Yun, I know you are in the media, you're doing the job, are you surprised? And with the the way they present the story to their readers, viewers, or listeners. And also interestingly, I noticed that all those countries who criticize or attack the Chinese Xinjiang policy, they are non-Muslim countries. Instead, interestingly, those countries who support Chinese policy in Xinjiang, often they are Muslim countries.
Well, that's a very, very interesting observation. So you mentioned that, so now the question really boils down to why non-Muslim countries have a problem with China while the real Muslim nations don't, right? So I recently interviewed a professor from Harvard University, and his name is Steve Kelman, and he wittingly said something like this: the only Muslims in the world the U.S. likes are the Muslims in Xinjiang. Muslims in the Arab world, the U.S. Secretary of State doesn't really care any of them. And Pompeo is anti-Muslim, but he loves Xinjiang Muslims. And it seems a little weird to me. Well, I'm saying we all know it's not something weird. It's just something hypocritical, right? Because, attacking China and destabilizing China or splitting China are perceived by many in Washington to be in the interests of the U.S.
Well, Mr. Said, if you look at the U.S. policy toward China, not only, say, in different regions, they have an issue, they are picking up a fight with China over not only Xinjiang, but also, like I said, Tibet, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Huawei, a series of issues. So, help us understand the big picture. What is the U.S. doing with China?
Great question. That's a very interesting topic. 13th November 1991, New York Times. The article was "Breaking China Apart." This is a Cold War mentality that is not new, which is what we have to understand. This is just a revival of the mentality which was already there. It was already in the system. It was already in the think tanks in Washington. Breaking China Apart, 1991 in the New York Times, this was published. And the article says that if China does not follow the US-based world order, the United States will play the Xinjiang card, quote unquote. The Xinjiang card. So, and they see that Xinjiang or Hong Kong or Tibet or Taiwan, which are of course integral parts of the People's Republic of China, are areas which can be used to apply pressure to China to conform to Washington's wishes. And that's why we see, if you look at the statements coming from Mr. Pompeo or President Trump, now they have increasingly started to target the Communist Party of China, which is the soul of the Chinese people and the People's Republic of China, which is the social fabric of China. So they are now targeting the party, and they are trying to distinguish between the people of China and the party, the Communist Party of China. So they say that the people of China, we are with you, you are being oppressed, but the Communist Party, you are the real enemy. But they don't understand that the largest political party of the world, with members of over 90 million people, is the CPC. Another important issue is that no other institution but the IMF and the World Bank have predicted that by 2030, the Chinese economy will be the #1 largest economy in the world. And we see that this is basically to contain China economically, to put pressure on Chinese companies, to make the Belt and Road Initiative, which is assisting developing countries. Just in the past 3 months in Pakistan, we have had $11 billion of investment despite the COVID pandemic. And misinformation is being spread that China wants world domination. But we have to look at history at this point, because when some countries say and talk of new colonialism, they have to understand that the biggest victim of colonialism was China. The 100 years of humiliation were on the hands of Japanese, on the hands of Germany, on the hands of French. China was being colonized for 100 years. And the Opium Wars, and we all know the history. So how can a country which has suffered humiliation and colonization for 100 years be wanting to colonize? So this is the context, and I see that this big power competition will deteriorate, and it will become more aggressive as we approach towards November.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Wang Jiang, I know you are a native, you are from Xinjiang. So following the comments by Mr. Saeed, the U.S., we observe that there's a deep anxiety somehow with the continuous rise of China. The U.S. predominance around the world somehow will be replaced by China. So they need to do something to stop or sabotage the continuous rise of China. What's your observation?
It is very obviously the U.S. government is behind that. For years, for decades, and the Xinjiang has become sort of like weakening point or breaking point of the U.S. to China policy.
From your perspective, why there is a repeated attack against China over Xinjiang? The million Uyghur people being detained and all kinds of, false information about Xinjiang.
Well, never underestimate jealousy and insecurity. When you feel jealous and insecure, you will do everything to bring down your opponent, your rival. And now in this case, it is China. First and foremost, that China is not a racist nation. It sees the whole nation as one and part and parcel of each other. It sees the nation as a nation state. And look the way that Americans, some Western countries are trying to treat the way China is developing Xinjiang. They don't feel comfortable with the fact that China is rising, but peacefully and fairly with regard to its domestic issues and internationally. At the same time, they would love to turn the international focus away from them with regard to what they have done to the Muslim world. I mean, just ask this fair question from the U.S. government, at least U.S. government. If you do really care about the well-being of Muslim people, why on earth did you turn so many Muslim nations into failed states? human rights, international law, the main development programs and articles of associations of the United Nations and its international development program. I mean, the only weakness I see with regard to the central government in Beijing is that it is very sensitive about its international image. Please don't be so sensitive. Ignore what some Western government tell about you and accuse you of doing, because they want to keep you busy. They want to make sure that you don't have time to think about developing your country and at the same time improving your relations with the international civil society. So why not keep you busy and concerned about the situation and the lives in Xinjiang? So what China needs to do is continue to keep its information campaign and its transparency to make sure that when one person walks in the Oxford Street in London knows exactly what is really going on in China, then they will never ever believe the fake media outlets, and they will know that they are being lied to for political reasons. Any doubters should look and ask questions from those who are behind the Road and Belt and Road Initiative. China is not only developing itself, it is also sharing its progress and growth with the rest of the international community. What is wrong with that?
Mm-hmm. Wonderful point. Zun, I know you want to comment on that.
Yes, I'll
Go
make
ahead,
a
please. Yeah.
short comment, because actually a lot of what your guests have said resonates with how I personally feel about what's happening in Xinjiang. I think people who haven't suffered the consequences of letting the problem of separatism, extremism, and certain mindsets fester don't know what it's like if things get much worse. My point is that this is true, that actually it's not the Muslims that they care about, but it is just to delegitimize and discredit China and to create a misperception in countries that actually have a lot to gain from China's rise and increased interest in the region. So I think definitely the fact that the United States is using Xinjiang as a card, like Mustafa mentioned, it's just one more way to discredit and supposedly delegitimize China. And the other thing that I really want to say is that as a Pakistani, as someone who we have suffered firsthand for years, the consequences of not being able to target these issues. And when you look at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's mandate, the idea is to eliminate, to target, to address separatism, extremism, and terrorism in a way that is sustainable. Is it sustainable to go to wars and to destroy and ravage cities and countries? And what is the consequence of that? But it is perhaps sustainable to understand that we need to provide opportunities, we need to provide infrastructure, we need to provide a holistic solution for the issues that we face as a region. And I truly think that what China has done has made Xinjiang safer. So I do think we need to understand better what China is doing. We need to be able to implement such policies. We need to be able to provide opportunities. And we need to know that people are not bad. We really need a peaceful, a stable, a sustainable way forward. And the SCO, the BRI, China in general manifests that. So I hope that your stories can come out and more people can really understand, because I know what it's like to be on the streets of New York and hide the fact that I'm a Muslim. Or my 15-year-old brother being stopped at JFK airport and asked if he took military training. You know, like these misconceptions really affect normal people. And the more we talk about this and the more impact we experience of certain policies, the more stability we experience, I think the narrative can eventually, gradually change for good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Zun. With that, we're coming to the end of today's discussion. Many thanks to our guests. Thank you for your time and your sharing, your insights with us. And also many thanks to our viewers online around the world. So see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.